Um, so we are going to talk today about red teaming methodology and daily life. It's taken me a few years to realize how important some of the skills we use in the field are, um, just to how I live every single day. I think some of my background and this general methodology and thought process is how um, falling into red teaming or any sort of adversarial work can be really, really helpful. So we're gonna kind of go through a few things and bear with me. My area for improvement is always that I go very, very fast, and that's not really the vibe I want today. I think we're all a little bit on edge, at least a lot of America is. I'm not sure where everyone else is coming in from, but I just want to be really respectful of that. And hopefully this talk is a little bit, both you come away with additional technical knowledge and knowledge of the methodology and attack cycle, as well as some skills that hopefully we can use to keep surviving in this crazy, crazy world that is 2020. So hi, I'm Kat. Thank you so much for the intro, Michael. This is my doggo, Mercy. We are on a paddleboard. She is skeptical. I just wanted to make sure that we're outside someplace peaceful in our minds as we go through this. So as Michael went over just some things about me, I work in threat and attack simulation. I have done the offensive attacker mindset for the last 3 years. I started specifically in the social engineering realm. Many of you guys have kind of seen me floating around there, but I've been working really hard to round out my skill set and make sure that I see the whole picture, because I think, again, a theme through this talk will be how helpful it is to see a whole picture and how helpful it is to bear in mind what stage you're at in different goals over different times. So have loved moving into the technical role and just really painting out the whole story for clients and teammates. So I do full spectrum pen testing. I love my pets, and I really like to be outside and not just at our computers, because I really do believe that it's important we all remember balance and remember that it's, we can't just get mired in one thought process or one thing. So this is a lot about how balance can be restored to our jobs in a world where it's really easy to rabbit hole and dive down and want to find that next answer. Like, one of the key things is making sure that you can step away too. So I do love meeting others. That'll become pretty clear throughout this, so definitely feel free. I'm not going to be monitoring Discord during this because I don't want multitasking to affect the experience for anybody here, but I will definitely get back to the chats later, so feel free to ping me. I am Pony Whisper in the chat in my personal Discord, but I have an alias in the Layer 8 chat that is Cat Murdock with my 0 as my O. So first, I just want us to all take a really big deep breath together. And that's very, I live in Colorado, so we'll blame this on the Colorado mountains, but let's all take a deep breath and just kind of get centered, let go of some of the stress. It's a Saturday. We've listened to some great talks. We have some more to go. So let's just take a deep breath and be very calm and open to both challenging and refining our thought processes moving forward. It's definitely been a week. The world is a lot, especially for our Black friends and members of the community. At least in America, we have a lot of things we need to work through. And so I just want everybody to forgive themselves, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. We're all still learning and we're also refining. So deep breath, it's been a week. Welcome to the weekend. So glad to see you're all here doing some fun stuff. So moving in, the goals of this presentation are to understand the red teaming methodology. And that is kind of how you as the attacker or the attacking team think through the whole process of a red team engagement. And just for anybody unfamiliar on the call, red teaming is the offensive test that you might run against an organization or in the military, but it is the offensive mindset. It is the group of individuals planning and executing the attack. And then the blue team is typically known as the defenders. So we're going to go over that attack methodology. We're going to learn what forever people are, and we're going to recognize them in our lives and thank them and thank the ones that have been around in the past. We're going to learn to apply red teaming methodology to our daily lives. It's a very handy life skill. And we're going to find a place together to apply this thought process to make sure that we all leave having learned or done something new today. So those are our goals. So red teaming, what is it? We went into a little bit of the definition on the last slide, but it is the how, in an unfamiliar situation, how can you continue pressing forward with your offensive goal? That goal could be to get information from a company. It could be to get in. It really depends on the perspective of the engagement. If you're working, hopefully you're working as a white hat offensive consultant or something. I'm not endorsing illegal behavior, just to be really clear. But red teaming is that thought process, that how can we compromise the system? How can we maintain persistence? How can we stay there and continue to get information and continue to push forward with our goals? Do you want to do it? I know a lot of people do. If I can help, feel free to ping me. I definitely want to underscore that not everything we do is full spectrum red teaming. Red teaming really is something that it is an exercise that looks at the whole system. And that system is multi-layered and multi-tiered. It's not just the network. It's not just the people. It's not just X, Y, or Z. It is the entire system. You have to consider how everything works together, and where all of the potential pathways in and vulnerabilities may lay. And it's not just one myopic train of thought. We're not, however, going to define it more than a couple of key points in this presentation. There are a lot of different, in general, most people can agree what red teaming is from a couple of angles, but a lot of people have different levels of finesse and go into different depth depending on their personal definitions of red teaming. So what we're gonna focus on here, and just bear in mind, in addition to any other great points on red teaming that others have out there, we're going to remember that red teaming includes the entirety of organizational systems. It, again, is not just the network. It's not just, can we get into a workstation? It's not just, can we reach the domain controller? It is considering how this organization was built and the tools this organization uses and the technology that this organization relies on and the people who both use this technology and use the facilities and use the company's assets, as well as the people who built all of those things. All of that is considered, from my perspective, in red teaming. It is a full spectrum engagement. And something, clearly, people are a huge part of any system that is built in an organizational way, any human system. They run it, they maintain it, they likely built it, and so we have an army of robots and maybe a singularity event, who knows? But people are really key to red teaming, and that is definitely where the overlap with social engineering comes in. Social engineering is one part, from my perspective, of the whole attack chain and the red teaming engagement. And you can absolutely test security awareness. You can test standalone phishing. You can test, just a physical security assessment. Can we get into this building? We're not going to touch the technology, but can we get in? So you can isolate any of those things out. But to be truly red teaming, and I think that the best and strongest engagements and the best data you can get for yourself and your clients is to not think about any specific aspect of a threat model or an attack cycle as standalone. So we're not just looking at social engineering. We're not just looking at an external pen test. It's not just about the web app. It's how do people use the web app. And so I do think that it's really important to remember the role of people in red teaming, and it's really important to remember that it pertains to the entirety of the organizational system. So those are my two main takeaways, and I'm totally happy to hear everyone else's thoughts on red teaming, after this talk, what other aspects you all have in your definitions, but at a minimum, to me, those are the baseline requirements for red teaming engagement. Now that we've level set there, and take a quick sip of water. So, who are the people involved in red teaming? I'm sure a handful come to mind. Literally in the name, you have the word team. So red team definitely lends to the idea that some of the people involved in red teaming are your own team. And that is very important to remember: who you recruit, what needs you need. Oh, that's redundant, but yes. What goals you're attempting to fulfill and how the individuals on your team can best help you fulfill them are extremely important. And then the other aspect that I often believe is overlooked in the way we're going to explore it is that your targets are people involved in red teaming. But from my perspective, your targets are technically an extension of your team. They are whether or not they know they're being recruited to be on your team is another story, but you are using them as part of your human team. I think it's really important to remember that when you enter into an engagement, because it tends to keep you like, while some organizations may be at a very advanced level where you do want to hit them very hard, like a nation state threat actor might, because they have had training, we don't want to just bust out of the gate and make all of our targets like immediately fearful. Clients don't like that typically. It can be a little bit scarring. That's not how we want to leave anyone. So I like to think of the targets as an extension of team. It keeps that very human investment front of mind. So those are how I view, 1.5 groups of people involved in red teaming. Your team and then your targets, who are the 0.5, as an extension of your team, not a whole category unto itself. So with your team, you sit back and you say, oh, we've got to come up with our goals. What's our goal? A lot of times it is just get as far as you can. Maybe a client defines it for you. Maybe they don't. Who knows? It's very nebulous depending on the client. But it's really important that throughout the entire engagement, you remember what your goal is. This can be the same thing for any aspect of any single test as well. If you are looking to do an internal penetration test, so you're assuming that you've breached the perimeter of an organization and you are sitting on that internal network, your goal is probably to both see what kind of sensitive information you can access, because that's really how you paint the threat of an attacker or threat actor to a client, as well as potentially setting some goal of getting like keys to the kingdom. So maybe becoming the domain administrator or getting access to a domain administrator account so that you can control all the technology. So that is a goal of an internal penetration test. For a phishing campaign, maybe you have one of two goals. One goal could be user awareness. So I'm going to send you to something where you learn what you just did. Let's, looping back to the last talk, this is levels of efficacy depending on the organization. But yes, so you could go a phishing campaign towards an educational landing page and to teach, or you can run a phishing campaign that's main intention is to underscore for the client organization, like how easily you can get passwords. So let me stand up a credential harvester and I'll see if I can get your employees' username and passwords. You can then, maybe that's the end of that goal. You just want to see what you can get. It's not actually about getting in. So all of these approaches require very different setups. They require very different needs, and they require a very different mindset sometimes. So it's important to set clear goals and helpful goals when you're starting out your red teaming engagement, or a life engagement, quite frankly. Spoiler alert, foreshadowing. So some notes on goal setting. One is that you don't want your goals to be too abstract. You don't want to say like, I want to find some information. Okay, cool. What does that mean? Some information could be employees just on LinkedIn. That's some information about an organization. Is that the level of helpful information for your client? Probably not. So it can't be too abstract. It probably can't be too specific. So that would be like, I am 100% going to go and find someone's passport. Maybe the organization doesn't store passports. Maybe they haven't ever used passports for a type of identity verification. So if you're like, oh, my goal is to get inside and also find a passport, that might be too specific. So a good goal in the context of both life and red teaming is something that you said that's both rigorous and attainable. So that is a goal that you really have to work for. It might take some effort, but it's defined in such a way that you can definitely achieve it. A great example of this would be, as opposed to saying, I want to find any information, or I want to find just a passport, maybe now your goal is, I want to find personally identifiable information on the employees within this company. where that PII is defined as information that shouldn't be publicly known. Things like passports, but not necessarily exactly a passport. Things like social security numbers, but maybe not necessarily social security numbers. So that is an example of a goal that is both rigorous and attainable. Throughout the course of your engagement, or throughout the course of whatever you are trying to achieve, it's important to keep your mind on the current goal. Keep it in mind for your team. Make sure that all the effort you are putting in, all the lessons learned, are in an effort to build towards that goal. An example, would be, it's great that I want to learn X, Y, or Z tool for the sake of this engagement. But if we learn along the way that maybe this tool is not exactly what will help us achieve our goal, then let's not learn that tool right now. Let's learn it later. It's not keeping us on track for the goal right now, front and center, particularly if there's a time crunch. So it's really important when you're looking at a attack path and you're looking at coordinating and collaborating with your team, you want to keep your current goal in mind, and you want to keep reminding each other of that goal and why it exists. That's a very motivating practice. For all of the deep breathing exercises at the start of this presentation, I am not much of your affirmation girl, in the sense that I have been really bad about, writing motivational things for myself. It's not an area of my life that I spend a lot of time on, but it is an area of life that's actually very well documented to help maintain goals and help achieve goals. Writing your goals down, committing to them on paper, committing to them out loud makes it more likely that you will achieve those goals. And I do not have those exact statistics right now, but I do know that there are peer-reviewed studies on this. I'm not going to make up statistics because that's a big pet peeve. But yes, keep your current goal in mind. If you're a person who likes to stare at these goals, feel free to write them on a whiteboard. Feel free to document them, but keep your goal in mind and keep it in mind for your team. So, backtracking a little bit, I've been doing a lot of thinking about hiring and how to break into a red teaming role. I get a lot of emails from very excited people, and I want to be able to help all of them. So I've done some thinking recently on what lessons did I encounter across my life that I think have built my ability to transition into this role more easily than my background might have led me to think I could, in the sense that I did not come into offensive security or red teaming through the traditional perspective of a technical role. I came much more through the policy side and the human system side, which made the social engineering jump an easier pivot. But I haven't been a sysadmin, and so I didn't come about these red teaming skills through traditional long-term practice, except for maybe the fact that I, hacked my Neopets storefront to have sparkly rainbows when I was 12. That was fun. But that was kind of, that was my hackerdom. And I let that and all my Lego Mindstorm robots kind of fall to the wayside for at least 8 years, which is a really long time in tech. So I basically feel like I started semi-fresh as an adult. And so what foundational lessons do apply? What other things did I bring into this role? And I think for anyone who's looking to pivot or get more technical or do a role on a red team or in offensive security, it's important to assess what you do bring to the table. What soft skills, what background, what perspective do you bring here? So some foundational lessons is loving learning is super helpful. It is a little bit of an off-topic pet peeve, but it drives me crazy when adults tell kids oh, aren't you so glad that school's out for the summer? You don't have to learn. No, that's not the lesson we should be teaching here. There are great things about summer vacation, and I'm never going to be one to argue that. It can be really nice to have some sequential mental health days. That being said, I think all kids love learning. At our core, when we were young, we wanted to explore, we wanted to ask questions and learn more and more, and we were hungry to know about the world around us. And you see kids, or if you remember, when you learned to read, suddenly it was like you had a superpower because you could unlock all this knowledge. So a love of learning really helps in the red teaming mindset. Be really curious. So not only do you like learning, but you want to go deeper. When you read something that you are like, oh, okay, that's cool, the answer isn't just let's move on. It's how does it work? What makes it cool? Why did that happen? So be curious, dig in. Something that's really important to note, especially from the human systems perspective, is that people can get really possessive over other people. And that is not meant to sound bad. It is, which is negating the frame clearly. I just negated the frame. But it's just important to recognize that if you are entering into a scenario or someone new is entering into a scenario, we feel comfortable with a group supporting us. We feel comfortable when we know that we belong. And so being really respectful of the fact that people can get a little bit like, this is my friend, we can't share this friend, whether you are 8, like 3 friends in 3rd grade can be really brutal. Or if you are friends with a married couple, we have a friend, Sammy and David, like I love them both so much, but they are married. And so at the end of the day, when you communicate with a couple of people, it's important you don't leave one of them out, because then there's going to be all these questions about, why did Kat just text David and not Sammy? Like, why? What is this? Unless it's a birthday surprise, should I be worried? Do they not want to hang out with me? So it's really important to just remember the social dynamics at hand and and try to do your best to not threaten what exists, but only be an asset to what could be. So you are there to pump everyone up and enable everyone. You're not looking to only enable 1 or 2 people, because that will make them, that can make people very, very, very squirmy because they feel like they're being left out. And if you're, in some advanced forms of social engineering, sure, maybe you want to, there's a goal that involves that sort of mental game, but in general, in your life, as red teaming relates to your life, I would suggest we all be really respectful of people's relationships with other people. Don't let drama distract you from your goal. So if you accidentally trigger something with a duo of people or a group of people, or if that's just someone else's baseline actions, like don't let drama or a miscommunication derail your team from achieving its goal or you from achieving your goal. Pause, have a conversation with the person, address it, and move on. And through that conversation, remember, it's super key. This is, I'm going to steal this quote from my friend whose name is also Kat, with a K. Remember that your perspective guides you. Your perspective guides you at work. Your perspective guides how you problem solve. Your perspective guides how you enter into an office that day. And you have to remember that you don't know what it feels like to be in someone else's shoes. They may seem like they have it all together, but they could have had, their cat could have died that morning, or they didn't have enough money to buy groceries, so they didn't get breakfast. So your perspective guides you. Everyone's situation and perspective in the short term and the long term guides how they approach all these problems and everything in their lives. So when you're interacting with people, both on your team and people who in the future might be part of your team, really bear in mind that you cannot make any assumptions about where they're coming from. Even if you think like, oh, their hair's a little messy this morning, maybe they were rushed. Like maybe they were rushed, or maybe they spent a ton of time on their hair and then their cat jumped on it, or their baby threw up in it, or they spilled their coffee. We don't know why, and so we should enter into all of our interactions bearing that in mind. Knowing these foundational things about how to determine your goal and how to recruit your team, let's dive into what the traditional attack cycle looks like. So I use the MITRE attack framework for anyone who uses that as part of their job, or just because they love it. I use that to kind of guide a fewer number of steps for the sake of this presentation. Since it is not a technical presentation, the MITRE attack framework gets really deep into what type of tools are used at which technical stage, and it is an amazing tool, but not all of it applies to the overarching ideas of the attack cycle. So here is just kind of the walkthrough. As you determine your goal, as we assessed, you recruit your team, you decide who you need, you all sit down, you do some research, you do your OSINT, you do some recon, you figure out what you need and what you have. So you're assessing the tools available. What do I have installed? What do I need to go get? What do I need to build? What's unique from our recon, et cetera, et cetera. So then you assess what needs and what gaps currently exist. And can we fill them, or do we need to work around them? And then knowing all this, you determine your attack paths. Typically, I think of some as like, oh, these are the ones that I like the best. Let's start, they seem the strongest. And I kind of go down a little mental list of ranked attack paths. And then you execute. Hopefully you achieve your compromise, and then you have to pause and redo the whole thing again. While, maybe you've come from the perimeter into an organization, now you have to enumerate again. You have to do more internal recon because you have more visibility based on your new position. You reinforce your existence there. If you're physically on a site, maybe you clone a badge so you can come back. Or if you're in a network, you set up a little sleeper beacon so that you can check back in at your leisure, and then you rinse and repeat. You do this until you set new goals. You say, okay, now I'm going to get from this user account to a local administrator account. Or, okay, I'm going to get from the lobby into the cubicle farm. Like, you set your next goal and you reevaluate the whole cycle. And I want to be really clear that, like, you keep looping through the cycle, but there's also, there's a foundational cycle. Your goal is to achieve compromise, or your goal in general is to get as far into the organization as you can. And then you have all these tiny little cycles in there as well. So as you try to achieve your overarching goal, you're setting smaller bite-sized goals along the way of get in, escalate, get to the top, find information, with the whole overarching like parent goal of finding the sensitive information, getting in, or for life, whatever goal you set for yourself. So these are just the questions that I basically asked as we were walking through that. I'll throw these slides in the slide deck channel. People can ask these questions of themselves if they find them helpful. I ask myself these questions literally all the time. I ask them about my day. I ask about my life goals. I ask them about work goals. And I drive my friends and coworkers crazy asking them these questions over and over again, but they can be really helpful. So what is your goal? Who's in your corner? Consider your move. Evaluate what you have. What will you need? When obstacles occur, how are you going to handle that? What tools do you need to carry to make sure that you can overcome hurdles and obstacles? How do resources help the next move? How will we make the next move? And then do the thing. Congrats, you did the thing. Now we have to start over. And that is, oh, and apparently I have this nice little number 9 there, my bad. And then what now? How do you stay here? Do we have any new recruits? Is there any friend or teammate that we can push on with that wasn't present or wasn't part of our circle for the last cycle? And then rinse and repeat. So taking that, I have basically tweaked a few of the steps to how I think about this as a plan for my life. Since I was really young, I have thought about my life in this way, and I didn't realize that it was essentially the red teaming methodology applied to my life. I really try to make sure that I know what goal I'm going for, how to keep it open, how to keep as many options to achieve that goal open as possible, and how to do it with the strongest relationships I can build. So it's the only real difference is in the verbiage around how we apply this as a professional red team and how you can apply it to your life are 2 lines, I think, 3 maybe. We're not going to call our life goals attack plans. You could, or attack paths, like totally fine, but instead of determine attack path, I like to think of that as determining my plan. What is my plan of action? What is my course of action? So it's not quite as aggressive as attacking my life or attacking, whatever within that. But if that's wording that resonates with you, feel free to incorporate whatever words you like in your use of this. So then next, instead of achieve compromise, just achieve your goal. We're not looking to compromise. Oh, shoot. We're not looking to compromise anyone in our lives. We're not looking, it's a kind of a little bit of a dark term when it relates to other people. So we're just looking to achieve. We're achieving our goals. And instead of escalating and reinforcing, maybe we're assessing and reevaluating. So we achieved this one goal. How does that set us up for our next move? What can we do now? How are we stronger because of the goal we just achieved? And while you're doing this for yourself, we're going to remember the spirit of the steps. So what's our goal? Who's in our corner? Consider our move. Evaluate the resources on hand. How do the resources help us? How will the move be made? And then do it. Do the thing. No excuses. Do the thing. And then you will have done the thing. And you can celebrate that before we rinse and repeat this whole process. So what now? How do we stay here? Any new friends? What's the next goal? Rinse and repeat. So of all these steps, this is definitely in my opinion, subjective question, but I want everyone to kind of ponder for a moment. What's the most important step for your life and maybe also for your job? But what's the most important step in this methodological process? To me, it's the people. It's always the people. The people stick with you. Even once you achieve your goal can be temporary and fleeting. It's great that you did it, but to me, good people kind of trump all. I have an odd relationship with social engineering because I do deeply care about people so much. I typically try and maintain, when I'm working, it might be very real that I encounter somebody that I see myself as they could be a possible friend. And so it's a lot of responsibility to be asked to trick people into giving up information. So even ahead of goal setting, even ahead of my goal is to get in, my goal is to push forward, my goal is to get information, my goal is to compromise. For me, I really like to think about the people above all of that. The people guide how I achieve my goal, how I think about achieving the goal, what I will and will not do to achieve the goal, because my perspective, my morals, and my values guide all these interactions. And so to me, good people and good relationships are worth preserving, even if at one time that person might have been a target in an educational exercise that our red team was doing. So I always like to bear the people in mind. I've been thinking really hard about how to categorize types of people in my life, and categorizing people is, it sounds like an awful sentence, but I mean it more as sometimes I'm sure you all can empathize with a moment where you're like, that person has my back, whether it's your partner or a parent or a sibling or a friend. You knew at some point someone had your back. To me, that's a forever people type. Even if the relationship fades or there's a falling out, some people mattered and were so impactful on you and a goal and a period in your life that they are a forever person, even if you don't still talk to them. So to me, you have your forever people. Then I have my maybe forever people. They are the individuals that I really vibe with, or you really vibe with, and you're like, oh, I could see a friendship here. I could see something growing. But maybe there's some sort of obstacle, you don't live in the same place, or your schedules are super different, and you can't nurture that person right now to a forever person. That's okay. They just kind of hang out here, and these categories are not stagnant. They can move. Forever people move away, get busy. They maybe aren't a forever person right now, but they were. And then maybe forever people could move close to you, or you start working together at the same company, and now they could become a forever person. After that, you have your people in passing, and they are individuals that maybe you got a little bit deeper into than you would have based on circumstances. So it just made a lot of sense to be friends because we both took the same workout class repeatedly or something along those lines. And then lastly, you have your category of like circumstantial poop heads and fart faces, which are the people who, it's the carrot in the grocery store. It is the person who, you ran a light because you were rushed and somebody got mad at you and flipped you off. That person and you could potentially, under other circumstances, be forever people. You have no idea. But at that moment, at that time, you ran a light and made them mad. And both of you probably thought one and the other was a circumstantial poop head, just based on the circumstance, what was happening right there. And I definitely, sometimes circumstantial poop heads can be elevated to forever people and you didn't even see it coming. And sometimes forever people can, you all can have a super tragic falling out and everyone or one party becomes the other party a circumstantial poop head. I did poll a lot of 7-year-olds to get this last category. Was really going for conveying the idea and the vibe without, it's nothing with people should be viewed as permanent. people grow, people change. So I thought that we should take some inspo from the littlest of us in how we label that category. So just to recap those notes, none of this likely lasts forever. Like none of these categories. You know, like the tragic thing is I know that my partner is my forever person. But my partner is significantly older than me. And so one of us will probably not be here as long as the other one. I don't know, maybe not, but in general, you do die alone. So one of us will go first. And, you know, even that strong bond that I know will be a forever person in my life will end. So forever people just leave a forever impact. They don't necessarily last forever. And anyone, at any time, any person on the street could be a forever person for you. You don't know when the moment will strike where they could elevate themselves in your view or vice versa. So in light of that, treat everyone like they might be a forever people. That is so important, both on engagements and in day-to-day life. You know, really give them the benefit of the doubt. Assume that they could be your best friend in 6 months. And maybe they will be. It's a great way to curate a really strong network. So treat everyone like they might be forever people. And then bear in mind that people are approaching systems that are unique to them. They approach everything from their own perspective, their perspective of that morning, their perspective from their life. So to really give everyone, the forever people, the benefit of the doubt and the ability to flourish into that role in your life, we need to remember where they're coming from. We need to be very empathetic and sensitive to the fact that we don't understand someone else's struggle. So how do we recruit this team? This whole process could quite frankly be a whole second talk. As I mentioned, I look at each interaction, whether it's on a job or in my life, as an opportunity for a new friend or for a new forever person. After some time, you know, you kind of get a vibe pretty quickly with the right questions of like, is this, you know, where will this person's role fit into my life? Where can it fit onto this team? So in a life, you know, you get that feeling of, oh, I really like hanging out with this person. Like maybe we can go to yoga, maybe we can go to a movie or play disc golf or whatever your cup of tea is. You can kind of figure that out. And then from a work perspective, it's basically the right questions in an interview. How do you fill the gaps on your team, the knowledge gaps, the personality gaps? And so, yeah, with the right questions and either the red teaming methodology or in your life, you can get a vibe pretty quickly as like, all right, this is worth pursuing X role between me and this other party for X amount of time or X reason. And then for me, some of the things I do look at that, you know, from a work perspective are the skills, what clients are we working with and what are their needs, what are the needs on the team. And then from a personal perspective, I do look at, you know, our shared values. Do we put other people first? Our shared morals, like, are we honest with each other? Is there trust? What priorities? Will you prioritize me the same level I prioritize you? I am more than willing to drop everything and drive 14 hours overnight to bail a friend out of a situation, but I need to know that under similar circumstances, you would do that for me as well. And then the most important one for me, from both a work and a personal perspective, is a desire to grow alongside of each other. So I love my team at work. Huge shout out to the task team. Everyone wants to grow. Everyone wants to push themselves. Everyone pushes forward. So it's really great, really focus on the desire to grow. Your forever people are clutch. Even if they become not forever people, they have left a mark on your life. They matter to your story. So we like to bear that in mind, keep it in mind. So a great industry example is I wanted to tell this really cool story, but we can't because the engagement is ongoing. So sad, here's the other story. The DerpCon CTF was the Denver Enterprise Risk, I forget what the P is, I'm so sorry, conference. And I will own that despite being in a really technically heavy role for a while now, and studying for years to increase my technical skills, I had never done a CTF. And my friend Kat really wanted to do the DerpCon one. For whatever reason, I had said I wasn't going to do it. And she pinged me that morning and really wanted to assemble a team. And I was just like, oh man, like I do not like losing. I have been really hesitant to try this, but okay, sure. So we sat back and we decided the goal was to make sure that we could compete in this thing. And my secondary goal was to not suck, hopefully. Big goal. And then, so we determined our goal. And then we recruited the team. Kat recruited me. And I sat back and we were like, okay, who else can we bring into the fold? And we grabbed my other friend Whitney, who runs the crypto privacy village at DEF CON. So she is quite the crypto killer, I guess, is a nice alliterative phrase there. So we want to win this ETF. We want to compete. We want to not suck. We have a team. We have specific skills. Other Kat is really good at web application testing and taking things apart in detail. I don't really know what I'm good at, but I'm great at reading things and Googling them very fast and figuring out unknowns from the situation at hand. And then we started doing recon. We looked at the points that were available to us. How can we do this? We assessed the tools. You know, we had our own VMs. Do we need other VMs? Do these require virtual machines? Like, what do they require? Let's talk about what we need now, knowing that. So, you know, it's like, who wants to be the person to tackle the set of these flags that needs a specific VPN? You need to go get that VPN connection. So we assessed our needs. We determined a plan. We divided and conquered. And we did really, really well. First showing, we wound up in the top 25 teams, maybe the top 20 out of 600 plus teams. We had started 2 hours late. And yes, I'm doing a little bit of a humble brag, but I was very, very pleased. And so this is a great example of like, okay, cool. Because of these strong relationships, because Kat and I are friends, because Whitney and I are friends, because we knew these things, these strengths of each other, and we're all, you know, they at least to me are some of my forever people. We were able to assemble this team literally within hours and do pretty solidly. And so I am immensely grateful to, you know, the friends who will drop a couple hours in their workday to come solve some puzzles with me. And that is a great both technical example of dividing and conquering our skill sets and recruiting a team that has disparate skill sets and then applying those skills really well. So here are our goals. Don't suck at the last minute CTF. What do we need? Kat, Whitney, friends, me. Look at what the competition is available. What do we have already? What do we need? Who does what, when, where? So how do we divide and conquer? So we're all making the best we can. And we didn't suck, so that was great. Pretty awesome. And the methodology, worked to an extent. So we're going to do it together.